Nikhila, you have muted yourself.
Yeah, in a minute or so we can begin, I think.
Yeah, we have a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can begin now, Nikhila.
Okay.
It's 9.
Yeah. Welcome all to this very special month in Talking Films Online. We're going along with the Kannada Rajyotsava fervor. We have 3 back-to-back discussions on Kannada films in the program titled Hosa Chiguru on new shoots in Sandalwood. It's a sad Rajyotsava, though not only for Sandalwood, but for every lover of Kannada cinema with the untimely death of Puneeth Rajkumar. An enthusiast and support for many new ventures in Kannada cinema. And as a Kannada film viewer, I only hope that there are other stars who share his vision and enthusiasm and who will carry it forward. Talking Films Online is a film discussion forum that began in June 2020. And since then, Dr. Geeta Vishwanath, a Baroda-based novelist, artist, independent scholar, and I have been coordinating the activities of TFO. We have had such back-to-back discussions in the form of a short film festival, a series of discussions on Iranian cinema, a retrospective of American filmmaker Kelly Reichardt, among others. So every week, generally, we have a pre-decided film, which all of us watch and then meet on Saturday night at this time for discussing that film. For today's discussion and for the next 2 as well, we will have what promises to be a wonderful panel comprising Harish Mallya, the respective filmmaker in on each of the Saturdays, and an expert, a scholar in film studies. In today's panel, we have Dr. Mohammad Shafiq K, who teaches literature, film, and cultural studies at Manipal Center for Humanities, Manipal Academy of Higher Education. He was awarded PhD in cultural studies from the EFL University, Hyderabad in 2015. His research papers have appeared in prominent journals like EPW, South Asia, Journal of South Asian Studies, and Bioscope, South Asian Screen Studies, among others. Welcome, Mohammad Shafiq, to TFO, and we really look forward to you initiating the discussion. The second panelist is Harish Mallya. Harish Mallya is a software professional with immense passion for cinema, which got him into the core team of executive and programming committee of Suchitra Film Society. He's been a part of the team that organizes film-related events and programs for the past 8 years, including the popular Bangalore International South Short Film Festival. As the film curator for the international section and evaluator for the Asian section, along with various film appreciation and filmmaking courses. He closely works with film sales agents across the world to know their annual lineup of films and makes recommendations to the festivals in India. He supports independent filmmakers across India by reviewing their scripts and rough cuts, providing feedback prior to the theatrical release or submission to film festivals. As a film festival consultant, he has helped several filmmakers and films with their submission to various film festivals. He's a critic who writes for the News Minute and on Facebook. He has worked as a creative executive for the independent films Pondu Motteya Kate, and he's the executive and co-producer of the independent Kannada film Arishad Varga, which premiered in London Indian Film Festival. We are also very happy, Harish, that you could take time out for us, and thanks for joining in today, and hope to see you over the next 2 Saturdays as well.
My pleasure, Nikhila. Thank you.
The third panelist today is MG Srinivas, whom all of us who have watched the film already are acquainted with on screen. MG Srinivas is an Indian actor, film director, and screenwriter who works in Kannada cinema. He made his debut as a director in Kannada films with Topiwala, a commercial entertainer starring Upendra. Srini's first rendezvous with the entertainment industry was as an RJ. His show on 93.5 Red FM, Blade Raja, made him famous. His short films had also generated an equal amount of buzz in the media circles. While Rules, his first short film, has the distinction of being screened at Australia's Bollywood and Beyond Film Festival, his Simply Kailosam won him the prestigious Platinum Remy Award at the Houston Film Festival. Srinivasa Kalyana is another film that he helmed. In fact, I was just watching it today before the Birbal trilogy, the first part of which we have watched prior to this discussion today, which he has written, directed, and acted in. Thank you very much, Srinivas, for joining us today for this discussion. We really hope that there will be more such opportunities for interface between us who work on, write on cinema, and people like you who make the cinema and make possible such discussions. Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Srini, for joining us. And it's now over to Mohammad Shafiq for initiating the discussion. Shafiq.
Thank you, Nikhila. Thank you for having me here. So I'm very excited to be in this very first day of discussing Kannada movies. So I have actually, before starting to discuss the movie, I have three things to say. First of all, what I can promise you today is a perspective from a very clean slate, because I am completely new to Kannada films. I am not an expert in Kannada films. In fact, so basically, whatever I'm saying today is from an outsider's perspective. So I want you to please take it that way. And so, I'm sure it has quite a lot of flaws, perhaps from an insider's perspective. And I would, by the end of this session, I actually hope that I will be corrected on many of these. Second thing is that I do not have a lot to speak. I will perhaps speak for 15-20 minutes. And the third thing is that I will not actually be speaking, but I'll be mostly reading out, because it's easier for me to read out than speak. It's difficult to remember everything in front of an audience. So here perhaps I should begin. Yeah. So as far as I understand, this Birbal is a movie which belongs to the detective genre. So feeling of this, one of a feature of this detective genre is this feeling of loneliness that it can give, the eeriness which is attached with this genre that the movie produces. One often finds oneself alone in these movies. The street is empty, the parking lot is empty, the basement is empty. So, perhaps this is the reason. Now, I do not have any numbers, but my impression is that, this genre has been doing very well on OTT platforms, and especially in this last 2 years when many of us are alone in our houses, the genre has worked quite well. What happens in these movies is that when the frame gets populated, when there are more people in the frame, it's usually the realm of the social. There's almost like a shift in the genre. Suddenly the mood is lit up, like, the light is bright and suddenly there's a joke. And, suddenly there's romance. But, you have a shift in these lights and you have this eeriness of the noirish genre, which is there. So the thrill of seeking here, the investigation, comes from this yellow tinge of wet and empty streets and the play of light and shadows. and the heaviness of these walls closing in upon ourselves. So every detective genre, it requires a particular kind of state. I have this very good example that I quite love to quote every once in a while, which is that sorry, was I muted all this while?
No, no, you were audible. You were audible.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, my some mishap here. So Orhan Pamuk has this novel called The Black Book. So the Black Book is about this woman going missing. So this woman, her name is Ruya, and it so happens that Pamuk's daughter is also called Ruya. And in the novel, she is the wife of this character, Galip. And now Galip has to investigate where has Ruya disappeared to. And it's quite a political kind of novel, but it is also, I mean, what is interesting about the novel is that the search, the investigation happens quite a spiritual level, in the sense that it's not a very kind of a rational clues kind of investigation. It's almost like you wear someone's clothes and you can become that person. Something like I was thinking it's more like, you know, this Lars von Trier's movies in which, you know, you assume the personality of the murderer and you know exactly what the murderer would do, something of that logic. Now, when he is discussing this novel in the other colors, so when he's discussing Black Book, he's saying that, you know, this detective fiction is actually quite new in Turkish language. And there is a reason for this, which is that in the Ottoman times, detective fiction cannot happen. This is because in Ottoman times, there is a particular law. The law is that if someone is murdered, the responsible party is the nearest house. There is no need for an investigation. Whichever house is the nearest to the place of the incident, they have to assume responsibility, and that's it. There is no further culpability. So basically, the detective genre, it involves particular notions. I mean, it involves a particular state. It involves particular notions of sovereignty, particular notions of human agency, culpability, the state civil society interface, etc. Now, detective genre, I mean, usually they work in the cracks of this. Like, you know, when this order is cracked, that is where you have the scope for a detective genre. For example, like, you know, I mean, one of the staple of this Hollywood serial killer dramas is that, you know, there is this guy who thinks that he's above the law, or, you know, he's following some other law, some other holy book. And then, you know, you obviously have a crack in the state civil society, or, you know, you have a crack in the law of the state. Or, you know, like in Birbal, when the police is not doing its job properly, then you have the scope for a detective fiction. Or at a more fundamental level, when the world is not rationally ordered as it's supposed to be, which is also the case in Birbal, because, you know, the movie starts with an accident. You know, an accident is obviously, I mean, by its very name, it's not ordered, it's not planned. So, you know, it cannot be attributed to a human agency. It was not there because, you know, someone had planned it to happen. So, and much of the detective genre is about restoring this rational order to the world, such that contingencies and happen chances are wiped out and everything seems to be already planned, which is also there in Birbal. I mean, for those of you who have watched the movie, I also, when I'm discussing the movie, I also don't want to spoil the movie so much. So for those of you who have watched the movie, you know that, but I'll be spoiling one scene later on in my presentation. But except for that, you know that there is something of an planning which has gone in the plot of the movie. So, and this is actually one of the functions of detective genre, which is that it wants to say that Yes, but after all, we can have a planned world. We can have a world which is still knowable within the rationalizing gaze of this human eye. So, which is why a detective genre is actually considered a very modern genre. Like, it is considered to be one of those signs that the polity, that the society is now modern, that you have detective fiction. Because, in order for a detective fiction to work, you have to have you have to have primarily an order of the rational world, which is also why I thought that Orhan Pamuk novel was quite an interesting experience. So, between the unsettling of rationality and its reinstallation, what the detective story offers is new knowledge. So essentially, it's a genre of knowing, of gathering new information. So it's called, I mean, in a very structuralist term, it's called the gnoseological plot. Like, what essentially happens as the plot goes forward is the acquiring of new knowledge. That is basically at the center of this story. So some of this knowledge is so basically what a detective movie has to do is to relay this information, this new knowledge, with all the resources that it has at its disposal. So some of this knowledge is quite straightforward, some are implied, and some are actually quite misleading. Every detective genre has to give us those red herrings so that we think that at the end of each episode, or at the end of each fragment, we think that okay, we are closing in on the person who have done this crime. So basically, the detective genre is premised on the subject who can know, the person who can know, who is capable of knowledge, but doesn't as yet have knowledge, but is capable of acquiring knowledge. And here is the vast field of negotiations that a detective movie has to take, or a series has to take, which is how is this knowledge to be ordered? So we have, like, I mean, to go back to, essential film studies, there are these different looks, three kinds of looks. There is this, what is seen in this frame, basically what is the camera looking at the world, but camera doesn't look at the world anymore, but generally saying. Then there are these looks of the characters at each other, and then there is this look of the audience towards the camera. I mean, these are basic things. But the thing is, what a detective fiction has to do, that it has this information which it has to provide to the audience bit by bit, and it has to order these things within these three loops, right? And this is basically the task of a detective genre. So uh, in recent times, we have seen many series which uses this ordering to actually generate new kind of consciousness. And I have, like, examples, like, for example, there is this Nordic detective series called The Bridge Broen, which actually deals a lot with the problems that migrants face by initially positing them as possible suspects. Like, it is most probably that this guy has done this. I think it was a Pakistani in that series. And then, we get to know a lot about the problems that migrants face. Or, in a series like Shetland, you have this guy who is just a recluse. He doesn't really, he's a very asocial guy, doesn't really interact with anyone, because of which people start suspecting him. And then, some time of the series is actually spent to say that, but just because someone doesn't speak to people does not make him antisocial. It makes him asocial, of course. Or you have, for example, in Broadchurch or in Mayor of Easttown, you have these guys who are convicted for some other crime sometime earlier, and then you have this, obviously, because now they have already been convicted of some crime. You think that okay, then they have to be the criminals, and these series spend some time saying that just because someone is convicted for a crime does not mean they are habitual criminals. Like, basically, this so this entire red herring is used to, in fact, generate a lot of discussion on social issues, which we hardly, discuss otherwise. So it is quite used quite as a social tool. Basically, in a detective genre, like any other movie, any other genre, it has to deal with this vexed question of how to order its audience, which is that should the audience be an insider or should the audience be an outsider? Similarly, should the audience be addressed as an individual, all those individual fears, individual paranoia, all of those trauma, or should they be addressed as a community? Like, is it, should the feeling be more oriented along community factors? I also have like J-Beam in mind. I just happened to watch it. I mean, it's all over, right? Yes. So basically, a detective genre has these choices, which is that it can either tell the audience, I mean, make the audience privy to the investigation as each idea occurs to the investigators, or it can choose to keep the audience in the dark, priming them for this one moment of revelation at the end in which they will suddenly know everything. So this is actually a choice which any detective genre, any detective movie or a series has to make. So if you look at, you know, an example, I mean, a recent example would be this series, Only Murders in the Building. So Only Murders in the Building is interesting because of two things. One, that it actually shows that even though detective genre addresses people in their individuality, in their individual fears, detective genres can always make a community out of these individuals. So, I mean, this is a story of three individuals who come together because they happen to listen to the same crime series podcast. And then there is a building, there's a murder which has happened in the building. So, it bonds them. But what is also interesting, there are two things interesting other than this in that series, which is that first thing is that the audience gets to know everything that the protagonist in the series knows. So in the sense that the moment the protagonist discovers something, the audience, it is immediately relayed to the audience. Now, this is at the formal level, but even within the plot, they have, even as they are investigating, they're recording everything that is happening such that it can be then relayed to the public because they themselves have a podcast. But other than that, there are other podcasts, there are other talk shows within the plot, all of who are saying how the investigation is progressing at that moment. So basically, here you have a structure in which the audience knows everything that the protagonists know, which means that the audience is an insider, which means that the protagonist does not know anything more than the audience. So what is also interesting about the series is that actually these protagonists are not great investigators. They are often given info like clues and how to think about, maybe this is what happened by all these random people, like, bystanders. So it's like basically investigation rather than centering on this one character. It's like investigation has become distributed over, over crowd, many of whom does not even have any names. So they are just anonymous, a new kind of like, I mean, a new kind of hive investigation that is going on. So this is, I mean, this kind of series also questions this dogma that people should not be told the whole truth. I mean, there is that general dogma, which is that, for any good functioning of the society, people should only be told what they should essentially know, because otherwise the system won't work. But there is a way of there is a kind of detective series which would actually fight a critique this notion by telling the audience that we tell you everything that we know and you will still enjoy the show, because I mean, it is this, there is this knowledge and it gets revealed to us and you at the same time. That is the idea there. So the negotiation between the looks is crucial to the detective genre, because in a way, much of detective genre is about the mystery mismatch between subjective truths and objective knowledge. So you often have this one person who is accused of a crime which subjectively, in subjective knowledge, person knows that he did not or she did not do it. But there is an objective knowledge which says that no, this person did commit the crime. And this is basically the mismatch in which a detective genre works. So an upsetting, so if someone actually goes, so this obviously within film, these two things have to be reordered, right? I mean, there's a subjective look and then there is an objective look. Now, if some filmmaker breaches this, then we think that we have been cheated. For example, like one of the complaints which people had against Talash, uh, I hope I won't be spoiling this for people who haven't watched it, but the thing is basically that there is one shot in Talash which shows Kareena Kapoor's character in objective shot, which actually is a breach of contract there, because if you know the story there, it should not have happened. If you know the story of Talash, it should not have happened. But the thing is, the director breaches that contract, and it actually affects our pleasure in the movie, because we feel cheated because we have made a particular assumption because an objective shot showed the character of Kareena Kapoor. Yeah. So again, so coming back, it's also a question of how much you can identify with the lead actors or of a movie or of a detective series. So, for example, if you take a series like Elementary, now the thing is, you obviously cannot identify with the lead investigator there, the detective there, um, very simply because this guy seemed to know everything. Today he will give you a lecture about what are the different kinds of bullets. Tomorrow he'll tell you about what are the different kinds of medicines, poisons. Like, in the sense that this is obviously a guy whom, you cannot identify with. But some other series, for example, something like Monk, which has Tony Shalhoub in it, like I think it was in 90s, the Monk series. Monk, he's a very gifted, or he says it's a gift and a curse. He's a very gifted or a very cursed detective. He can see things which we cannot see. But at the same time, this guy is very, let's say, asocial. He does not understand the social conventions that we as audience, we also know that even though he knows many things, there are also things that we know which he does not understand. It's just that he often mistakes people's reaction to him. He thinks that, I mean, he does not understand it, but we understand it. So it's always possible for us to laugh at this guy, because even though he is very brilliant, there are also things, I mean, very commonsensical things that we know above him. Now, if you look at a different series, Marcella. So if you look at Marcella, which is a detective series, again, now Marcella is interesting because the protagonist there, a female investigator, has certain disorders, but we only know about it as much as she herself knows about it. In the sense that there is something wrong with her, and that is the sense that we are given. And she also only knows so much, that there is something wrong. And so it's basically like, the identification is almost total there. Now, there are other series which uses this this different kinds of identification. For example, in this series, The Fall, which has Gillian Anderson as the lead detective. So it is set in Belfast in Northern Ireland. There's an excellent example of this, which is that there is a particular scene in which a woman enters into a washroom and sits on the toilet seat. Now, this particular episode is given to us from two perspectives, one from a male gaze and one from an objective gaze. And the two appears to be very different, I mean, very subtly different from each other. So detective genre can also play with the objective looks rather than only being subjective. So Similarly, so this is my central point, and this is what I actually thought, I would look at Birbal within this frame. And when I look at this distribution of knowledge or the identification factor in Birbal, uh, basically, I mean, as we know, everyone who has watched the movie knows that Birbal works by actually denying the audience complete identification with the lead actor. The lead actor knows many things which we are not told as he knows it. So, at times it has to do with how star system works. Like, I'm not sure in what is the tradition in Kannada movie, so I won't say that. But I have this example of a Malayalam movie. It's the movie is from 1990, Mugham, in which Mohanlal plays the investigating officer, police officer. So basically, our most of the time he's there on screen, so we actually get to see him investigating. But there is one crucial moment which I thought was very interesting in the movie, which is that he is looking at a possible suspect, and then he tells her, "I know what you are up to." And instead of, now the thing is, there are only the two of them there. There is no third person. But instead of telling her what it is, he writes it on a sheet of paper and gives that sheet of paper to her. Now, interestingly, even though we have been with him almost throughout the movie, when this scene happens, we do not see him writing. We see what is written on the paper when the person on the other side, the woman, opens it. Now, this is actually, it's quite essential for the star system to work, because there you do not see it through the eyes of a star. You actually see the star as a presence which hovers above us. Like, because the music changes. The moment she opens the sheet of paper, the music changes. She knows that she is caught. But the thing is, we are not given the place of the lead protagonist. And this is how star system works. We are actually given him as a presence there, and us as this third person in the scene. So this might be, I mean, I'm saying that one reason why Birbal has this denying audience this complete knowledge might have to do with, how a detective genre can work within a star system. That is one possibility. But the other thing is also that, perhaps this is the way in which you can forget this contingency, this randomness of this world, by introducing this planning aspect to it. Like, I mean, looks like everything was anyways planned, like in that sense. So, I mean, in this modern world, I mean, we need we always need actors. And one of the reasons why we are always looking for conspiracy theories, whether it is Corona or something else, is because it is actually what is scary for us, rather than to believe that, okay, three people in one room is planning all of this. The more scarier thing for us is to imagine that no one actually planned any of this. It just happened. That is much more scary. So even though, like, I mean, modernity is considered to be like the substitution of God by the man, but the thing is, what is scary for us is to know that actually even man is not in control. Like, so in fact, one of the social functions of detective fiction is to actually re-establish this idea of, no, things were already planned, things are it as it was supposed to be, this the idea of destiny. And I think Birbal actually follows this particular trajectory there. Now I'm going to spoil one scene, and this part I will read out from Birbal. So there is this one particular scene that I want to look into a little more detail from Birbal. So the scene that I'm referring to is when Vishnu has to go to Mysore to a hotel to meet this person, this woman there, uh, whom he had helped many years back, and now he just wanted to know if she can help him. And then when he's on his way back, and when he's sitting in the bus, he gets a phone call, and then she says that, I have a news report which might help you, so I can give it to you. And then what he does is to get off the bus, and then what we see is we have this objective shot of Vishnu walking. So basically, there's this empty corridor. We see him entering the hotel corridor, walking towards the room. There's no one else in the corridor. And so this is an objective shot. And then he enters, Vishnu walks into the room, and the shot turns into a point of view shot, a subjective shot. We see that the woman is sitting on the bed with her back turned to us. Then we approach this woman from her left, and then we make a turn in front of her so that we can see her. And we realize that this woman has been stabbed. And then, it cuts back to the corridor. It's empty, but we already know, I mean, we have this foreboding of this threatening presence. The police enters, goes into the room, arrests him. Again, all of this is given from a very objective point of view. Now we cut back. We have the same scene of Vishnu walking into the room, the subjective shot, approaching the woman from the left, turning in front of her and seeing her already stabbed and perhaps dead, right? But what is the difference here? The difference here is that, I mean, the thing is, I mean, the moment you see it, you get very irritated. What is this? In the sense that, what was this guy's eye, a camera? Because, I mean, you're supposed to be a subjective point of view. How has it become suddenly an objective point of view? I mean, it's almost like, the mistake in Palash into 10. But suddenly, I mean, this is where the surprise happens, because the director has a surprise for us, which is that this guy was wearing a pen camera. So what was subjective shot? What was the point of view shot? Now becomes all of a sudden, like, even though it has now a pinkish tinge, it becomes an objective shot. Now, all along, Mahesh, the lead character, he knew this. He, in fact, orchestrated this. That is why he has this evidence now. But we aren't told. But the thing is, what is actually helping this subjective look to turn into an objective look? And that is very simply technology, right? And that too, it's not like great technology. It's cheap China market technology, right? So, the attention-seeking use of technology is, of course, a post-cinematic fact. We know that, I mean, right from what was that? I think Aishwarya Rai movie in which she's double or some Tamil movie, Shankar's movie. Right from that time, we have this, I mean, heavy discourse of, how now wonders can be created on the screen, which does not really have to exist in the real world, right? And there's a lot of discourse. So I mean, in Boys, you have this entire song series, which has this animated woman there. Or when Shivaji came out, we had this entire, those Facebook, those days, WhatsApp did not exist, as far as I remember. And we had all those people sharing on Facebook how it was actually not Rajinikanth who danced for that Urkude Sunlight song. It was some assistant director, and it was all computer. So it's like the cinema itself doesn't want to have any sense of, we are conveying some kind of reality. But this is basically what the technology can do today. And ironically, we also have at the same time a lot of movies which claim to be inspired by real life. Like, these two things are quite, it's quite interesting that these two things are happening. The post cinema is also happening with issues of, inspired by real life on screen. So, in fact, much of the investigation in Birbal is by Mahesh Das is aided by technology. It is, in fact, an adeptness of the use of technology which drives the investigation. So, both the woman who called him to Mysore and the police seem to be quite antiquated in their techniques. See, remember, like, the woman called him to meet him so that she can give a newspaper, but she could have easily taken a picture of it and shared it on WhatsApp. Perhaps 9 years back, these online links did not exist, but this was definitely a possibility. Even the police seem to be using all these human informers, while, Mahesh Das seemed to be quite adept at getting all this data. In fact, I think this is also the first paragraph about the movie in Wikipedia, which is that, Birbal also makes this show of technology. I mean, not just in the plot, but also in the form. Like it has this advertisement aesthetic of, of those having to relay. I mean, you can just, if you look at the, I mean, to see the difference, you only have to remember what happened in Alai Paide versus what is happening in Birbal. Because in Alai Paide, the man is trying to find out who can this woman be who smiled at him in that train. And then he does make all these deductions. Okay, who goes to college at this time, how many colleges are there now, how many on this route, and there is this. But it's, I mean, none of it is actually digitally empowered, let's say. I mean, it's all just rational calculation, as opposed to if you go to Birbal, it is quite, I mean, it is one of those moments in which it works with this ad aesthetic, in which a lot of information is there, but it has to be said in such a short time that you have to use all of these graphics. And this is actually something which is notable. Now it is also there in the plot of the movie, because if you look at how Birbal finds Vajramuni, it's actually because of technology, and not even like some Batman, James Bond kind of technology, very very ordinarily accessible kind of technology, which is why I do not think it is a stretch to say that this is ultimately a movie about aspiration for millions of youth, especially in places like Bangalore and Hyderabad, whose actual visa to the passport to the world is their prowess of technology. That it is because technology is considered to be a level playing field, because technology is relatively new for everyone in India. So in this context, one is reminded that Mahesh Das is in fact the latest employee of a law firm, a corporate. While we may expect another movie in which a lawyer who has studied law through grit and determination is now fighting a case while he's not even being paid the lawyer's fee, Birbal is not such a movie. For Mahesh Das, it's a different route. His route to his destiny is through a corporate, is through a law firm. So this is a time in which the path to freedom is through the groove and grovel of office. So Birbal then is I'm ending here. Birbal then is a film of the detective genre whose precondition is actually rampant surveillance. While the ideology is that of a fallible state, state looks like it's quite old, and a very amenable and friendly technology. It is a film which belongs in a world in which the bearing of the self is widespread and often voluntary, and it works precisely because the discourse is not that of disciplining, but that of a state which is behind the times, a state who fails the test, while we express ourselves with the latest technology. But this is just ideology. The lesson to draw from Birbal, on the other hand, is that the danger lies in precisely the fallibility of the state. That is, after all, the state is far too human. That is my thank you.
Thank you so much, Shafiq. I think I'm so glad that I asked you to introduce the film. In fact, Rashmi and Ajanta too will be introducing the films over the next 2 weeks. Have also told me that they are not very in a great proximity with Kannada cinema, but I think after listening to you, I think this is what this is the kind of discussion really that we were looking forward to, where you can in some ways take it out of its immediate context and place it in a different trajectory of various kinds of the genre itself, but also various kinds of subjectivities, which your discussion has done very, very admirably. Thank you so much. Harish, it's over to you now. You can take over.
Thanks, Nikhila. So I'll briefly, discuss on some of the points So one thing about technology, right? So Shafiq told rightly about the technology. So if you have recently watched Netflix series by name Crime Detective, India Detectives, there was a 4 episode series wherein police, uh, Bangalore police, crack different cases, and in each of the cases, you can see how technology has helped them. So many of them, asked a question even on their Facebook post, like, what did police really do? They just sat and saw the CCTV footages, they went through the mobile records, and that's it. They broke the case. Like, why not? Like, when technology is helping you, so you take advantage of that, right? Like, and when we spoke to the police also told us that now people who are doing crime are not using these technologies because they know, they'll get caught. That's why they are again going back to the primitive methods, like they'll not be having any social media accounts or mobile numbers or anything like that, right? So that's very much relevant to the technological world that we are now in. And coming back to Birbal, Shafiq just briefly mentioned about Jai Bhim, right? So I'll kind of try to draw some parallels over here. So foundation of the narrative, if you see for Jai Bhim or Birbal, so what is it? So it's a innocent guy who is actually put behind bars for a crime that he has not committed, right? And then there is a lawyer who actually fights for the case. So the first part, whatever is there, right, it's pretty much similar if you take the case of Jai Bhim also. The second part is more of an investigation. So in Jai Bhim, it's more of a courtroom argument, but here it is the investigation which Mahesh does, right? Um, the other aspect what I would like to bring in over here is uh, this film is based on another idea which actually happened in Korea. So it's a real story that happened in Korea. What happened was, like, a guy was jailed for 10 years for a crime which he had not done. And there was this lawyer who actually was not well off. Hello? Hello?
Sorry, please go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So who was not well off, and he just wanted to, kind of get a case and continue doing his living. And, this happened in real. So he could prove that this person is innocent and the law is at fault. And if you see the end credits, they properly show you apologies. The court itself gives an apology to this unfortunate victim who has been jailed, for not doing this crime. But what happens over here, right? Like now, maybe Srini can respond later point of time. uh, See, this idea, you know to make it commercially work in a situation like ours, where we pursue cinema as a means of entertainment. So you can do different things. Like, you can do what Jai Bhim does. The other part is, you can have, so because here the lawyer and the victim are the main two pivotal characters that you will be watching. So there could have been an emotional bonding between these two. So, but Birbal doesn't do that here. So Birbal works on the popular kind of entertainment that is being, very much digested by Indian cinema lovers. So he brings in much of aura around this investigation part, and there is this, a slight romance part also, which is very much necessary. And then there is this sidekick also, right? So there's frequent comical bits you can see, right? And this wholesome kind of craft, so I would see it as a craft. Like, there should be maximization when people watch the film, right? So people from different ages should watch the film. They should actually get the film also. See, there is, as Shafiq said, so in any investigation film or a detective film, there are some things which the director or the filmmaker will hold for himself to reveal it at the end, or stage by stage, so that people watching the film are getting clues and building the story by themselves, right? Here, this is the same case. Like, there are certain parts which at the end we come to know, and we question ourselves, wasn't there any other route to kind of get a resolution much faster, right? Because I don't want to reveal it, but you can see that the protagonist already has the kind of information, but why so much of delay was there? So that is what we term it as a screenplay. Like, you need to kind of build up that part, make a story, traverse, and then reach that point. So that is how I think most of the filmmakers kind of start with an idea, but then they build up certain subplots and go there, right? Maybe Srini can respond to this. And apart from that, so I didn't make any notes, but so Srini had actually called me for the premiere of this film, and so while you watch it on big screen, right? So there are a lot of other things that happen. So you basically will read the film and then process it. But when you watch it individually, like at your home or something, so there is a kind of disjoint that happens, because there are other things that come into picture. And for a detective or a thriller series, right? So watching it in a theater gives a different feeling, because I had watched Birbal in theater, and I watched it even today in the morning, and I had a different feeling, because whatever feeling I got in the theater was not that much when I watched on a laptop screen. So I actually urge people to visit the theaters, watch the film, so that once the light goes off, you are having a single connectivity with the film, right? So I mean, at this point, I'll stop talking and maybe pitch in for any other questions or any other discussions that we need.
Thank you so much, Harish. We knew you'd be one of the first, you would have been one of the first people to have watched the film. So glad that you watched it again for today's discussion. Anyone who wants to respond to the film at this point, come in, into the discussion. Please raise your hand or unmute yourselves and let me know.
Nikhila, can I come?
Yeah, yes, Geeta, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Nikhila. Thank you, Shafiq, and thank you, Harish, for your introductions to the film. Well, I, of course, enjoyed the film, and I liked the noir touch to the film, the night scenes and all of this. And I also found very interesting the structure of the movie, especially the Rashomon effect, as it is called, after Kurosawa's Rashomon, the film. So I found that very interesting, the different, the way you have structured it from different points of view. But I was just wondering whether it was necessary to actually show on screen, like flashback and then the flashback, and also spelling out the points of view, so and so's point of view, and that. So that I thought was a bit of an overstatement. And what is very intriguing is also the very, the title of the film. It's called Birbal Finding Vajramuni. And the name of the character is Mahesh Das, which is Birbal's real name. Birbal was Mahesh Das Brahmbhatt. And also Vajramuni, finding Vajramuni. Vajramuni, as we know, is the name of is the screen name of a very well-known Kannada star who has mostly played negative roles. So I was just wondering whether there was, some significance behind this. And also the Janhavi Mahesh, conflict, which was a kind of a subplot, you could say, or the subplot. I was wondering whether that was actually necessary to the plot, because it was not really, fully developed. So these are some of the things I wanted to say about.
Thank you, Geeta. I think Srini will be responding in the end to all our queries, all the points that we are making, all our comments. Shaila, we are moving to Shaila. Shaila, go ahead. You raised your hand.
Hi everyone. So I wanted to point two things which I observed. I saw a lot of references to Sherlock Holmes sort of using technology, like he gets the power of going to the actual scene and visiting who is actually killing the person. This sort of technological use has happened when the hero gets the power, but then not everyone, the characters, get that power to use the technology except the hero, because like Harissa was saying, in commercial films, a lot of time the hero is the one who has to be more powerful than anyone else in the film, though the girl who is his girlfriend, who already has got a job in Hegde Associates. But when he joins is when the film goes into another range, when he gets the power to, he has access to a lot of things. There's one thing I saw a lot of references from Hollywood films, and when I saw the film, the story, first thing that struck me is Korean films and Korean series. It usually has this sort of plot, and where this guy, a normal regular guy who's aiming to become an prosecutor in a big company, and he's not into finding finding truth or bringing laws to people's life, but he just wants to survive. But he gets stuck with some case where he gets involved with that case. He's not willingly does that. He's not fighting for justice or something like that. The character of Mahesh seems to be like, he just went to a company and he got involved because he has a lot of other motives to achieve. That's one thing. And second thing is, I don't know why I wanted to ask the director, whenever a girl talks, like you can see in the first interview of scene, she's always talking in English. Like for what, I don't know. Like everyone's talking in Kannada, but when the girl comes in interview, or when the female lead talks, in the beginning of the film, she starts answering in English. And then even the head of the associate also talks to her in English. There's this sort of thing which I observed in the beginning of the film, that a girl starts talking in English. Like it's like I just somehow associate it with a lot of things. Even when we discuss films, it's like I'm deciding, okay, these are all are talking in Kannada, let me just make someone talk in some other language, or direct saying that that person has come from North India, or they don't know the language, sort of a thing. Yeah, so this is one thing. And it was an interesting film. Thank you.
Okay, Shaila, thank you. Anyone else would like to come in at this point? Please unmute yourself so that I know that you want to come in. While other people, I think, gather their thoughts, a couple of quick points from my end. I think, Shafiq, I too was thinking along this lines of the police and the state and civil society and the breakdown of that. I too was thinking along those lines. I was also thinking of recent Kannada films where, the police it's not just that there is a police politician nexus. I mean, there are a lot of films like that, but where the police are themselves in some ways criminals. Here too, the nexus with the politicians is just mentioned in passing, but it seems like it's an act that a criminal act that the police themselves are in some ways instigating and getting involved. So in another recent Kannada film, Kannada Gottilla, I think even there, it's like the police have really crossed over, So the police as criminals is also something. In this context, I was kind of trying to see what happens. I mean, for instance, in the Tamil film Visaranai, you see similarly the police trying to fix or frame some young people and some under trials, and which ends in the kind of tragedy that it does. So here also we have the same sense of an innocent man being framed. I was just wondering, Shafiq, thinking aloud after your presentation, I was wondering, does the presence of this investigating persona, the lawyer in this case, it could be a detective, it could be anyone else, does it help to deflect in some ways the conflict that is set up between the powerful police on the one hand and the powerless? So Visaranai does not have any mediation, so it's very stark, very powerful, the kind of conflict that it stages. Whereas here, there is this protagonist who matches wits in some ways with those in power. And therefore, though there is this person who has undergone punishment unfairly for 8 years, the film is not really about him. So it's more about whom we appreciate. That is the clever lawyer, the clever detective. So this is one point. The second point, which I again found very interesting in the film, is the way it kind of recuperates this objective, lawyer, detective, finding the truth to a son's, kind of, it's not revenge. I mean, it's served cold, certainly, so it's not revenge. So a son's, attempt to find out who his father's real murderer is. So this, I feel, I don't know whether Harish will agree with me or not, this, I feel, is a particular kind of framing, is a framing particular to Kannada cinema, where the protagonist is not on a mission which is objective, abstract, which somehow has to be something that he's doing out of his personal motive, if one could call it that. So there is a kind of sense in which there is a motive which is personal, which is driven by his own familial interest and all that, which again, I think will explain what Geeta was asking, that is the presence of this lawyer, this character, the female, the lead, the lawyer in the film. So everywhere, though he is a lawyer, it's more interesting, I suppose, to also have him in the capacity of someone, who's out on this mission with a personal stake in it. These are my 2 points. Thank you very much. If either Shafiq or Harish want to respond to everything that has happened so far, you're welcome to. If someone else wants to. Okay, if someone else wants to come in, that's also fine. Anyone who, Shafiq or Harish, you want to, go ahead, Shafiq.
No, I think, in this film, obviously, sorry for saying something, spoiling the movie if anyone hasn't watched it. But I mean, we know that the protagonist, the lead actor's father, was a police informer. So that way, it has already made the question about a few bad apples, kind of like, it's actually not a question of police anymore, because his father was also actually an appendix of the police. So that way, there is that. But actually, it's quite a trend in the sense that, I mean, at one point of time, if you remember, we used to have these movies where, the army becomes the army versus the police, and then, the police is the corrupt people. And then you remember those Amitabh Bachchan movies, like, there will be this army who is there to protect the common man, while the police is all corrupt. We had this journalist versus police at one point of time. That was used to be the trend. Now, I think, I mean, this lawyer versus police is actually something interesting. I mean, something of a trend which is happening. But I think it is also this. It's a general condition also that there is actually no other imagination possible right now. And that might also be in the sense that even um, e- even if the police as a whole is corrupt, the only way to stop it is through law, uh, which is again part of the state itself. So I mean, it is we know it from recent occurrences that for in a way it has become like the only way to now stop the state is through the constitution of the state. We have come into a very peculiar kind of a system. Also, the thing is, there is really no other dreams anymore in currency. Like, it's in the sense that it has become a question of how, in whose hands. Like, I mean, it is when Rang De Basandi came out, it looked like a very, kind of like a limp message. But the thing is, we surely are actually in that realm right now. Yeah.
Yeah, anyone else wants to come in?
Uh,
Yes, Harish, yeah,
yeah,
please go ahead.
I kind of agree with you. Like even I was, following that he's kind of trying to help others, but then once this came in, it became a personal agenda, right? Everything was so personal for him. And what difference would have been made if it was not the case? If the person who died was not his father, I believe it would have been more powerful, because in the ending you would have seen an innocent who has been jailed and a person coming in and helping him out to release him, right? So but here now it ends with completely the central hero character in picture. Maybe I think I would like Srini to respond, like what were the actual thoughts to drive in the screenplay like that. So because at the end of the day, it's the filmmaker's choice how he has done it, and
Yeah,
there will be strong reasons. So
yeah. Sir, Padikal, sir. Yes, please go
Uh,
ahead.
yeah, yeah. I just want to thank you for that very fascinating presentation on this. But I want to go back in detective, about detective novels and also detective fiction and detective films. Okay, there is a cultural logic of imperial state earlier, and when people like Conan, Conan Doyle, etc., were writing, and then when we come to Umberto Eco and his novels and his essays, etc., etc. So my simple question to Harish and also to Shafiq is, what is the philosophy of detective novel or detective fiction or detective films today in this post-modern era? Thank you.
Okay,
So
Shafiq,
Shafiq,
you
yeah,
want to respond?
yeah, Shafiq
No,
watches a
yeah,
lot of detective stories, maybe
yeah. I
series.
only
So
watch.
yeah,
Unfortunately, I don't read much, but yeah. So no, the thing is, I mean, as if you if we look at a very contemporary, a lot of detective fiction is actually about the fallibility of the investigator. Like I said, in the sense that Marcella, for example, does not even know what she is suffering from, but she is also investigating. In the sense that this idea of there being a rational order to the world, in recent times, I mean, like if I remember, at one point of time, the argument used to be that man is becoming more and more like machine, and that is why we have a Sherlock Holmes like character who knows only what he requires to know, because he does not know many things, but he will know what is the exact poison which comes from the Caribbean or something of that sort. Now, much of like a lot of contemporary detective series, at least on OTT platforms that I watch, is actually about how the detectives are quite human. They actually do not know much, and it is they have to. I mean, there is this entire discourse of having to battle this uh, personal battles, whether there's family or mental health issues. But at the same time, the fixing of the rational order of the world somehow seem to be one of those mediating devices through which the person can have some kind of approximation with themselves, some kind of non-alienation from whatever is ailing them, almost like a therapy. So I think and these days, obviously, rational order is still there, in the sense that I mean, except for, very interestingly, there is this American series about a boy who has committed a murder. It's quite interesting. Sorry for I mean, luckily for all of us, I don't remember the series name, but it also has a reference to a cult and things of that sort. So I thought it was going the usual American way of, some people believing in a cult and doing whatever crime. Now, what is interesting about this movie is this particular series is that this boy, right from the beginning, says that he has committed the murder. And at the end, we know that yes, he has committed the murder. There is actually no real, any real information with difference, and that's actually what makes it unique. But at the same time, even with all these discourse of fallibility of human beings, and this uh, impossibility of having perfect human beings, because everyone is suffering from some dysfunctional family or dysfunctional mental health, even then the detective genre still believes in the rational order, as far as I can see, in the sense that they can still fix human agency and culpability onto, the egoist subject, the I subject. So yeah, I think that would be my very, based on my very narrow reading and watching experience.
yeah,
Yeah. That is true. Interesting answer. My question is that when, during the, if we take detective, whatever detective narratives or even films as part of the, in defense of, or in some sense, there was absolutely no conflict between, the idea of rationality or the belief in rationality between, between the state as and people at that point in time when, Sherlock Holmes, etc., novels were being published. But at this point in time, there is a section, the state still believes in certain kind of rationality. That is how our courts how our courts are functioning. They are functioning on the basis of, rational order and believing certain sense of rationality. And a large section of people also believe that such rationality still exists. And here in this meeting, we are 24 people who do not actually believe in that. And, so in this kind of a context, how do we theorize a detective, film? That is actually my question.
Earlier, I think, Sherlock Holmes or any other detective books, or if we see any series, uh, the inner conflict, as Shafiq says, right, the man versus himself, that conflict was not at all brought. Even in the novels, I see that, there is a crime, and much of
Yeah.
emphasis is on the,
Yeah.
finding what is the crime, who did the crime.
Yeah.
But nowadays, if you see all these web series, whatever is coming on OTT, are adapted. Like they are again written. Means they are novels which are adapted as web series now. And in every web series, we see a personal conflict being brought, like what Shafiq mentions as dysfunctional, and there's a personal issue. It could be a disease which the detective has, or a family problem. So it's becoming very common. Like nowadays, every series which is of the detective genre has this personal conflict. So we see two tracks. One track is the investigation track, and the other track is how he actually kills his own inner demons, or resolves the inner conflict.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, but I think, in the sense that, the question is actually that why is it that we have this genre which still insists on rationality when the world seems to have agreed that actually is just procedural rationality, but otherwise there's nothing rational to the world. I think that is the question, and actually I think that is something to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, thank you.
I will also, it's something to think actually. It has to, obviously it has to do with how our causes which relies on identities perhaps is missing the crucial articulating joining link, and perhaps we still have to borrow procedurally from an earlier discourse perhaps. But it is something that we should, I will think about it, but we should also always
Thank
be
you.
thinking about it.
Thank you.
Anyone else who wants to come in now? Paniraj sir? Ajanta, do you want to say anything?
Nikhila, good evening. And first of all, I don't have anything very sort of insightful to say, except that, and also because, Dr. Shafiq mentioned this thing about law and procedure, etc. So in psychoanalysis, so the idea of the analyst, so there is one narrative on top, and then the analyst, like the detective, actually tries to figure out what lies underneath. Right, so the trope of the detective story is something that's very, very pertinent in a sense, especially, we're already pointing to that, the violence of the law. Right, and the fact, for instance, the Gothic comes back in the Age of Enlightenment. So there is the whole, so whether it's Sherlock Holmes, and I'm not here referring, there is of course a historical shift that happens from colonial law to, so even in Avara, it's very, very famous court scenes. And there are so many, in the Dilip Kumar Amitabh Bachchan film, I'm forgetting now.
Shakti.
Shakti, exactly. And then, the state, in a sense, the vigilante figure. And, if you move further down, But kind of the large, point that kept coming back to me is, of course, the fact of reason being very, very brittle. And while in some ways, and the really profound question, what does it actually, what is actually post-colony? And I'm thinking of an Achille Mbembe on the post-colony. So what are the continuities and what are they not? And even in a much earlier world, who are the people, and what were the dark corners that, in a sense, reason actually pushing aside? So I don't watch so many detective films, but this trope, of there being a surface narrative and then somebody going down is, in a sense, at least for Sigmund Freud, in some very critical sense, the trope of modernity. I think, therefore, I understand is actually, you don't actually know what lies beneath. So it's a very powerful trope that Freud returns to at many points, this and the trope of archaeology. But I don't have any more kind of, really pertinent things to say, except that, of course, reason is founded by precisely putting order either on the margins or brushing it underneath. And it's always bristling. It's always going to, in some ways, spill over because it's so constrained. And of course, the narratives that we build are completely ideological. So, and all of us know that very well, so Laha and the gaze and suture and all of this, yeah. So thanks for a great introduction to Kannada cinema, and I look forward to.
Thank you very much, Ajanta, for that. Anyone else wants to come in now? Yes, Sanjay Kumar. Yeah, please go ahead.
Actually, what I found interesting in this film is that it brings in three different points of view. Like the first point of view is mentioned as Vishnu's point of view. The second one is like police FIR point of view. And third one is Amog Varsha's point of view. But all these points of view finally, Geeta was also saying that they have been described as the Rashomon effect. But I think in the Rashomon film of Kurosawa, which is based on the short story of Ryunosuke Akutagawa, who wrote In a Grove. That basically that film is based on that short story In a Grove and not on Rashomon. Rashomon is another short story of Akutagawa. But anyway, what Akutagawa tried to show in that film was that establishing truth is very complex, and there were different perspectives given in the story on which this film Rashomon of Kurosawa is based. So finally, what happens at the end of the film, that the characters, like those two characters, it's raining and they're under one construction, one gate, yeah, that is called Rashomon gate, yeah, and there, and finally they are puzzled whether what is truth, and then one child is found, and the film stops there. So it doesn't. Maybe it gives a hint, but it doesn't answer it. So we are still puzzled, and we find it extremely difficult to establish the truth. So in that sense, if we take the Rashomon effect, then this is not the Rashomon effect which we see in this film, because in this film it's canceling out other perspectives, other alternative facts. For example, alternative facts raised by the police, by virtue of its strength of the institution, and the other perspective. So finally, it establishes one truth. It's not leaving us puzzled to reflect on the nature of truth or the way. So it is based more about like how the truth is established. So what we find that, as Bruno Latour says, that the facts are networked. So facts are networks. That means that facts cannot establish themselves on their inherent strength. So there is nothing like inherent strength of truth, like we say Satyamev Jayate, automatically the truth will be established. No, nothing happens like that. So the truth is, the facts are raised by certain institutions. So here, like it's by a lawyer and the judiciary, and those institutions, they give support to this kind of fact, and then only the truth can be, or the fact can be established. So in that sense, this film, I would not say gives a Rashomon effect, though it's interesting at the same time. It brings in different kinds of perspectives. But finally, one fact is established, that this Vishnu is not a murderer, he is an innocent person. That is what I guess the director is establishing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sanjay, for bringing out this important distinction. Though it seems to be organized or structured like the Rashomon effect film, as you said, it's performing a very different kind of function over here. Anyone else who wants to come in, who has anything to say? Yes, Shailashri.
I was just thinking out loud about how important is a resolution, the final verdict in a detective film, or is it a continuation which we see in every detective film, that it comes to a resolution, comes to a conclusion, saying that this is what happened and shows to people? Or are there films which do not do this or need not do it? What do you guys think about it? Has it changed, or is it remained same?
Okay.
Nikhila, can I respond?
Yes,
And thank you. Yeah, so
Yeah.
Dr. Sanjay, thanks for that super observation. And Shailashri, so in a sense, it's exactly this ideological bent of the realist narrative that suggests there's only one possible solution. And the truth, in a sense, is incontestable. So the very organization of the narrative, or the logic of the law, which, in a sense, hides a whole kind of ideological violence. So the whole sort of thrust of the avant-garde, right? And in a sense, for instance, for somebody like Godard, right? The destiny of film was not to tell stories. And here I'm going to sound really impertinent, because unlike Harish sir, I'm totally an outsider. Yeah. So in a sense, people this idea of cinematic pleasure is so deeply ideological. And I'm not just here talking of feminist filmmaking, right? But, we have avant-gardes of very many kinds. So this idea of a neat beginning, middle, and end. In a sense, there's an authorization by, of course, here it's also actually the state, the ideological apparatus of the state, but even otherwise, when you have a kind of, just kind of romantic comedy, and there's a neat tying up. So that is, and why there's so much of discussion around what kind of deep-seated needs do narratives fulfill, and psychoanalysis talks about this all the time, the idea of, a whole person who, in a sense, finds resolution. So no, absolutely, to your answer, no. In theory, there's no, but I'm also suggesting that in theory, if we had detective novels that actually had the Rashomon effect, perhaps that would also suggest that we lived in a very different kind of world. Am I right, Nikhila? I don't know. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
So quickly, I would like to respond to this. See, you can definitely leave it open, but what happens is people go to watch a film for, getting a satisfaction. So if you leave it open-ended, many of them will not understand. So, that is the main reason when the commercial factors come in, the filmmakers try to underline or put in a resolution. There are films which are open-ended, but the success rate of those films are quite low. That's an observation that I have done, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Yes. And I clearly agree on the Rashomon point also, because it here it clearly indicates a definite possibility of what has happened, right? So which is not really the Rashomon, but much of the Rashomon effect in Indian films are like this, because only that perspective is brought in, but resolution is always there. That perspective thing is basically termed as Rashomon effect. So at least in the film wise, they speak about it. It's not the entire one-to-one mapping what we see in films.
But I've also
Ulidauru Kandante is, I mean, does try to bring in a little bit
Yes, yes,
of instability
yes,
in terms of closure.
yes.
Yes, go ahead, Shaila.
I've just observed that bringing in a lot of this Rashomon effect, or this effects of directors, it's become a stylistic technique in films recently. May it be the jump cut of I'm not getting the director's name as of now. So all these techniques of Quentin Tarantino's, may it be all this become a sort of stylized way of narrating with certain genres, may it be noir, mystery, thriller, and detective films. Like it became so important to show the one sequence with freezing rain and the actor walking through it. It's I find it very stylistic choice of showing the actor in such way. For me, this whole thing about freezing rain and showing the person to go, it's using Sherlock Holmes. It's just this one of the film which does take this as a stylistic element. I don't know if the director has used it in a different way, but yeah, I've seen a lot of films using these stylistic elements.
Thank you, Shaila. Rajan, do you want to come in? Okay. There's some problem with the audio, I think. Yeah. Rajan, is it better now? Yeah. Go ahead. Paniraj sir. Sridhar? Okay.
Nothing.
Okay.
Exhausted for today.
Okay. Yes. Yeah, Rajan is having problems with your audio, I think. Okay, we'll come back to you, Rajan. Maybe it's time for Srini to respond. Over to you. You've listened to the different perspectives on the film that you have made. Welcome, MG Srinivas, to this discussion, and over to you.
Hi. Thank you so much. I've been listening to all the conversation that's happening for almost like, what, 1.5 hours. Even I didn't think so much about the perspectives, what people were talking about the film, because ultimately, see, it's actually a filmmaker's idea, how he wants to present the story, or whom he wants to present the story to. What is his target audience, or how he wants to, maybe it everything depends on what his intention is with the film or with the idea. If the intention to make it very realistic or semi-commercial or commercial, it depends on the filmmaker. As a filmmaker, for me, my two major intentions are, one is to entertain the audience, the other is to get back the money what the producer has invested. Those are the main two intentions. The rest of the things, I really, it actually doesn't matter to me. But those are the two main intentions for me as a filmmaker. One is to entertain the audience so that the person who pays to watch the film, uh, he doesn't get back to home bored, or he doesn't scold the director or actors who have acted in the film, first thing. And the other thing is, of course, for all filmmakers, maybe the people who have invested have to get back that money from a commercial point of view, from a production, from a producer's point of view. So these are the main two intentions what I keep in mind while writing a story. And the other main point what I keep in mind while writing a story is when it comes to when we were talking about technology and all those things, what actually I keep in mind is the film has to cater to all sector of audience, because my film is just not watched by maybe software professionals or only educated people. My film is also watched by an auto driver. My film is also watched by a farmer, by all sector of the audience. So the film, even the cab driver will watching the film, he has to understand the film, and it has to be an entertaining film for him as well. For the A sector audience, it has to be an entertaining film, and the A sector audience have to also understand the film. That is one main thing which I keep in mind while I'm writing a script. It has to be a universal script, because my film is not showcased only in Bangalore or in metros like Bangalore or Mysore. It is also showcased in smaller districts. People from all over Karnataka or all over India watch the film. So even in small villages also they watch the film. So when people are watching there, they those people also have to enjoy the film, and it has, and the people have to understand the film also. That's one main factor which I actually keep in mind while writing a film. For example, after Bible got onto OTT platform, there was a farmer who actually called one of my co-actors. I was like figuring out how he got the number, but there was a scene in the film wherein I repeat a phone number, wherein we go to search in search of a police constable. So in his house, when we were having a conversation with his son, so I actually tell out a phone number. So he actually tells it's a wrong number. The actual phone number is this. So there was a guy who actually saw the film on Telegram, not even on OTT platform. So saw the film on Telegram, and he noted down those two phone numbers, and he called the first number, which was a wrong number. Maybe the number didn't get connected, or it was not reachable or something. The second number was the number of my co-actor. So he called my co-actor, and he had a conversation, and uh, how he enjoyed the film and everything. So the main thing what I keep in mind while writing a script is to cater the film to all kind of audience. So first thing is entertainment factor, and second thing is all these audience have to enjoy the film while watching the film. That's those are the small factors which I keep in mind while making a film. That's the only reason why we don't go over the board technically, or use of lot of technology into the film, so that people don't understand while watching the film. So okay, they think okay, this is something else. So that they don't get connected with all those things. Why we use simple things in terms of technology or throughout the film is to make all kinds of audience understand the film when they're watching it. That was the one thing what I keep in mind basically, uh, because there are few films like Three Idiots, all most of Rajkumar Hirani films, which are universal, which are actually enjoyed by all kind of audiences. So again, it's the intention of the filmmaker, what he wants to do with the film, whether he has to cater to certain sector of audience, or he wants to make a very realistic film, or if he wants to make a commercial film with the idea he has. Um, and the ideas actually, yeah, like we said, like a lot of conversations were happening. There are few real incidents which the idea gets popped up. Even when I was talking to, I used to make a lot of filmmaking workshops in the COVID times for most of for youngsters so that they could learn filmmaking. And I was having Lokesh Kanakraj on my session. So even he was telling the idea of Kaidi was actually how we got the idea of Kaidi was there was a news article wherein a few maybe robbers escaped from the jail and they went back to jail. They went back to police station to rob something from the police station. So that's how he got the idea and he wrote the entire script. So the idea might come from anywhere, but how you execute and what your intention is very important. Whether your intention is to make it very realistic or if your intention is to make it uh, commercially viable, it depends on filmmakers and how they want to present it and what their uh, target audience is. It actually varies from filmmakers, a lot of filmmakers.
Yeah, there were like a couple of specific questions, Srini. One was about this, bringing it back to a kind of personal quest for truth and closure for the central
Correct.
protagonist.
Yeah, I heard Harish talking about it. Maybe it's again personal thing. Maybe Harish might might have felt that without a personal agenda, the character would have been very powerful. But as a filmmaker, I thought if it has a personal connect, it will make a character very powerful. Again, it depends on personal, uh, uh, everyone's perspective. Maybe see, for example, in Jai Bhim, they give an example. They show the character as he's an RTI social activist who fights for people, and he doesn't have a personal connect. So that's how they carry the film and close the film. So here we don't give an introduction to the personal life of the lawyer. We just open the film, and it again depends on how we want to showcase the film. And I personally felt if there is a personal connect or a personal motive, it'll be more powerful than keeping it non-personal.
Okay. Anyone else? Yeah, there was another question about narrative closure. So telling the story in a way, not leaving it open-ended, kind of, giving a neat kind of ending where all the loose ends are tied up, not making it seem as if truth can be seen through multiple perspectives. So though there are these three, though the entire film is structured through the eyes of these three characters, ultimately it is one truth that emerges in the film. So there was a question about this multiple perspectives.
Yeah, I think someone answered it actually. I think Harish answered it because people get satisfied when the film has a proper ending. Because see it's actually from our childhood days when we start listening to stories from our grandmothers where they narrate a story. They say there was a person, there was a king in a small town. It has a proper circle. They don't know they don't know screenplay. They don't know anything about how a story has to be written or to be told. But we listen very with lot of attention to how the stories were told. Like for example, Ramayana or Mahabharata. We have grown up that way, listening to stories of mythology or historical stories which have proper endings, and we are satisfied with the intention. And we are maybe we have read a lot of Panchatantra stories where a story has a moral to it. So this is what the story, and this was the moral of the story. So maybe a lot of people are satisfied with a closed ending and something. Um, if there is a moral, fine. If there is a justification to the story, fine. Maybe if it's entertaining is also fine. Maybe uh, uh, they find pleasure when it has a closed story. If it's not open, like Harish told, uh, the success rate of those kind of films are very less when it's an open-ended film.
Okay. Any other questions to Srini now that he's begun to respond? Any questions?
I actually have one. So I think this was asked by somebody else also. Like, why was that underlining required? Like flashback from Amoga Varsha's perspective. Was it really required? Like when somebody watches the film, I think he inherently gets that. So why
No,
why
again,
why do filmmakers means is it for the reachability that you do it, or uh, do you make
see,
that because it should be easily accessible or understood by the film watcher?
okay, there are two things for this. Yeah, Harish has told, yeah, reachability is what we look into it when we want to cater the film to all kinds of audience. It's just not people in Bangalore in multiplexes watching the film. It might be, I actually think when I'm writing a script, one thing which I keep in mind is whether when I take my parents, they are able to understand or not. Whether the cab driver who is watching the film understands it or not. It has it not really spoon feed all the audience, but at least uh, make it more understanding to a lot of audience and make it reachable to a lot of audience. That's what I think. So that's the reason why we have put Amoga versus point of view or etc XYZ point of view throughout the story. That was the major intention when we were putting those point of views, Amoga Varsha point of view, or FIR point of view, or Vishnu's point of view, the flashes or the text in the film. Because what I have understood when I've traveled across Karnataka is the audience in Bangalore are not as same as people in Hubli who are watching a commercial film. They really don't get along with films when they're made bit intellectual. When we don't actually put all these things, they will not understand it. Maybe a farmer who wants to watch a commercial film like Bahubali will not understand if you don't put those quotes.
Um, this is um, yeah, Sanjay Kumar says Dr. Watson, the companion of Sherlock Holmes, is a very cultivated person, a connoisseur of art. But Shastri in your film is a different type of character. What was your objective when you were creating the character of Shastri?
Actually, the main motive of creating such characters is like uh, to give the comic relief throughout the film, where we have a comedian when the film is more serious to give comic relief, and also to Shastri is again when the character is rounded off, when we reveal that Shastri was the person who Mahidas and Shastri actually planned together as friends, and Shastri was actually planted into that uh, law firm, and then he gets in Mahesh so that they can work together to solve the case. So the main intention, there was nothing like Sherlock Holmes, Watson was more cultivated here. The main intention of creating such characters was to give comical relief throughout the film.
As Madhav Prasad famously argues, the friend or the comic sidekick is the first fan of the star. So here is Shastri, who performs the role of being your on-screen fan of the star figure, that Mahesh Das character stands for.
See, that's what
Um,
how you want to portray the film, portray the idea. It again depends on the filmmaker. As I said, if you want to make it very realistic, keep a small idea and make it very realistic, or make it full blown into a commercial film. It again depends on the filmmaker and what his intentions are while making a film.
Yeah, it's you're talking about intentions and reachability and so on. I was just wondering how you envisage the Kannada film audience today. At some point in time, the model that you're suggesting was very much the case. That is, Kannada cinema had an audience within a space, within a region called Karnataka, or maybe within certain selected parts of that region where Kannada cinema was watched. The Mysore, Mandya, Bangalore region was probably the dominant place where Kannada cinema was watched. So when star films, even to this day, probably get made. They get made keeping in mind largely this kind of an audience. But today, with both with digital filmmaking as well as with the reach of cinema, not necessarily through the network of distributors and exhibitors and theater and so on, but through OTT platforms and various other means of reaching an audience. I was wondering if this notion of the Kannada audience can be as static as all that. That is, those the farmer in Hubli, or so today I think the notion of who you're making a film for is itself in flux. Whom you're keeping in mind, is it even possible? Is a question that I often keep asking. So, is it even possible to kind of posit a Kannada film viewer today? The social location of a Kannada film viewer today, is it homogeneous? Is it changing? So this is my question, Srini.
See, it's slowly changing. For example, maybe like last week I was traveling in a cab. I'd given my car for service, so I was traveling in a cab. So I was having conversation with the cab driver. So he recognized me. He asked me, "You have done in Birbal?" So I told, "Yeah." He told me it was a very good film. So I asked him one question: "Where did you watch the film?" So he told me Telegram. He didn't say Amazon Prime. And not everyone has access to OTT platforms. Very few people have access to OTT platforms, and a lot of people watch films illegally on Telegram or whatever platforms they get through. Slowly, it is changing. Slowly, it is changing. See, one factor which I have observed is when you release a trailer or a song on YouTube, there are millions of views, maybe like 1 million, 2 million, 10 millions, or 100 million. If you release the same film on theater, if it's not a star film, I'm not talking about star films, I'm talking about newcomers film, there'll be hardly any audience who will be coming to the theater first day for sure. Because on YouTube, it's free of cost. People don't pay money to watch a trailer or a song or a film. But when you are coming to theater, you're paying 100 rupees or 150 rupees, or if you're coming with a family, you're paying 500 rupees to watch the film. So the audience will think, the person who is paying that money will think twice whether I have to watch this film or not. He really doesn't care if people, if there are 4 stars given on a newspaper, but it really matters if his friend comes and tells him this film is good. He will go to theater only then. If his friend comes to him, maybe if his friend pings him on a WhatsApp group and tells this film is good, go and watch, he will definitely watch the film the next day. But he will not watch the film if even if critics give 4 stars for the film on newspapers or websites or whatever it is. So those are small observations what we have made throughout making the film. And the percentage of social media audience, to say like on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, is just 15% collectively to the audience who come to theater, who are not active on social media. There are almost 80% of the audience who watch commercial films in theater are not active on social media. The social media is there only to reach the audience. Till today, still, I have been to poor and rural parts of a lot of places in Karnataka. People still now they read newspapers where they get information about films from newspapers. It's slowly changing, but again, it will take some time because the connectivity and usage of technology is slowly growing. Maybe over the time, it will change. Maybe when the star does experimental film, it will reach faster, and rather than newcomers keep trying to make a lot of experimental films. because the market for a thriller film is very less compared to that when you make a love story or when a star does a commercial film, because it hardly a newcomer's thriller or super hit thriller. I'm talking about a blockbuster hit thriller film. A newcomer's thriller film will hardly collect around 5 to 6 crores if it's a blockbuster. What I'm talking. If it's a love story, it might collect around 20 crores or 25 crores. So there are a lot of things when people watch the film. So what they want to watch, what they like from the film. And when a star does a thriller, these things might change. The balance might change because the star has a wider range. And when he experiments while working on these kind of films, maybe the balance might change and what you're saying might actually change.
Okay, if any other questions are there, this is your chance to ask Srini. Otherwise, yes,
Nikhila.
Sridhar, yes, please go ahead.
When is part 2 is releasing?
Currently, actually, I'm working on a film called Old Monk. It's a family entertainer. It's due for release. So after that, we are starting on the film, on the filming of Birbal 2. We were actually waiting for Timmarasu to get released because Timmarasu is the remake of Birbal. So it's now on Netflix. So we are planning to shoot simultaneously the Kannada and Telugu version of Birbal 2 and Timmarasu 2 and release it together.
I think Sridhar is the only one among us who has watched Timmarasu as well as Birbal.
True. I like this movie only, Kannada one.
I see. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay. If there are no more questions, one last word to both, to all three panelists, Harish, Shafiq, and Srini, and then we'll wind up. Harish, you want to go first? Any closing remarks?
Nothing much. Whatever I wanted to say, I just told that. So I keep discussing films. I think that's the thing what we can do, and whatever questions you asked, right? So how do we make the larger audience aware of the power of cinema? Like not underlining, but visually they should understand when they watch the film. For that, I think you need to watch more films. That's the only thing what I can say. Yeah.
Thank you, Shafiq.
Nothing really, actually. Quite nice to be here today. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the next film. Yeah.
Okay. And Srini, anything to add before we wind up?
Thank you so much for having this discussion and having me in this discussion. And I think I had a great time listening to a lot of things discussed about the film. It's a good thing, so that we keep learning from our mistakes, what we have made, because the filmmaker is generally not happy after the finished product, whatever the film might have. Even if it's a blockbuster also, end of the day, the director would have not felt, okay, I've done my job. Even he will have, okay, I could have done this better kind of a feeling. So I think it's a space for learning all the time, keep improving your skills to entertain in the upcoming films, to make a good entertainer. That's what my intention is, always lies in. So hope to entertain a lot of people, including you all. Maybe we'll catch up again sometime soon after the release of other films.
I want to make one addition to you. See, because films are getting released on OTT, we don't know which OTT is releasing. There are many platforms.
Correct.
And for Telugu movies, I'm a Telugu person. So Telugu movies, we found something called iBomma.
Okay.
Wherever OTT platform it gets released, it is not a legal one. So they're making it available there. And
Okay.
we do not have theaters where I am located and all that. So
Okay.
we can pay, but we don't know which one is releasing it.
Correct.
So many platforms. We are getting information also through this iBomma.
Okay.
iBomma.com. If you Google it, only Telugu movies are available.
Okay. Okay.
So Sridhar, your question is, you want Srini to tell the Kannada equivalent that he will not reveal.
No, it's there is this thing like for all the other things you will pay and watch, right? Films, unfortunately, films and music are some things you just
Correct.
get it digitally without paying anything.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
really
yeah.
bad, but
It's
many
really-
many of them don't even know.
Sorry, I have membership for Netflix, Prime, the Z5, and also Disney, Hotstar, all those things.
Yeah.
But there are other platforms these films are getting released.
Yeah, Sony
Sir,
Live and all that.
there is a app by name OTT Play, OTTPLAY. So if you download that app, it will tell you all the latest releases which are
Films.
coming on Friday, what platform, what language, everything. So there are some
Correct.
Twitter handles which do this. You can, I think, Let's OTT or something. There's a Twitter handle. If you follow that, you will get an update like which platform is releasing what film. So it is better to do that.
Because iBomma, I got to know many releases. We don't know, even it is not publicized anywhere.
I know
Hmm.
there are a lot of platforms like that, but it's all illegal. So
This is illegal.
yeah.
I think that's the power of word of mouth.
So please stop that habit. So there are some
Power
legal
of watching
sites
the
which,
film for free of cost. maybe.
yeah, please.
No. Actually, he's saying he's adding to the revenue because he's getting information from iBomma and going and watching it from the ITT platform. So
Then it-
you're more.
Oh,
yeah.
then okay, it's just information then.
Yeah,
Yes,
then it's
yes.
fine. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. So I think we have had the first session of new shoots in Kannada. Hosa Chiguru in Kannada has begun wonderfully well with Shafiq's presentation, Harish and Srini's discussion that followed, and everyone who contributed to this session. We hope that all of you will join in the coming two sessions, and we hope that there will be more such discussion of Kannada cinema. One of the things we feel very bad about, and I'm a Kannada film viewer, but I feel that Kannada cinema is the state it is in sometimes, and not a great state compared to other language films, partly because there is not much discussion, by way of discussion that happens, and not many serious engagement with Kannada cinema. So I think Shafiq comes from a place where Malayalam cinema is discussed, at various levels, and it, with great, I think, enthusiasm and passion. So I think that's something, that is somewhat missing in Kannada cinema. I hope we will have opportunities for more such discussions, through TFO and various other platforms.
Yeah, I think there
Thank
should
you
be a lot
all.
of discussions because even I thought it was right what you said, because 2 years back when I had been to IFFI, one of my films had got selected for Panorama. So I could see a lot of assistant directors from Tamil, Malayalam being there just to listen to all the programs over there. But I could hardly find people from Karnataka coming there to listen and to learn what filmmaking is. Maybe over the years it will change, but I think likely you see, we need to have a lot of discussions. Actually, like maybe 2 years back, before we started Old Monk, we had actually planned something called Right Karnataka. Even Harish was a part of it. I
Yes.
think Harish was also one of the judges. We wanted to invite writers from all over Karnataka so that we could get some stories, identify writers, but it was very difficult for us to find good writers. Then we thought, okay, a lot of few like Pavan was one of the judge, and the very famous journalist called Jogi was also one of the judge. Satya, who was the director of Rama Ramare, was also one of the judge. So all these guys were judges for the competition, but we could hardly find good completed stories. So maybe over the years, with a lot of these discussions on how to write a story or how to write a screenplay or the way we make films, maybe these things will change and we get to see a lot of good content in them.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nikhila, it's in a transition state, right? So
Yeah.
we are working towards making it better. Like, you hardly will find filmmakers who are so open to discuss their work.
Yeah.
So I'm so happy that
Absolutely.
Srini actually
Absolutely.
came in and is acknowledging, right? So
Yeah.
you will not find many Kannada filmmakers do this.
Yeah.
So it's a difficult state. We have to cross that. Only then we'll grow better. Yeah.
Yes,
Thanks. Yes.
yes. I'm so glad that there are filmmakers like Srini who have joined in this discussion. Earlier we had Rupa Rao when we discussed Gantu Mote. So I'm so happy that there is this forum where we can exchange ideas in this fashion. Thank you all for joining in, and hope to see you next week. Have a very good night and a good week of Kannada film watching.
Thank you.
Bye and good night.
Good night.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Shafiq. Thanks, Harish, and thanks, Srini again.